Welcome to Black History Matters 2022, presented by the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, also known as NAHOF, located in Peterborough, New York. Black History Matters is an educational series that seeks to highlight historical events in the Black American experience. This series consists of 28 videos that NAHOF will release daily through the month of February 2022. Videos are viewable on NAHOF's website. The mission of the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum is to honor anti-slavery abolitionists, their work to end slavery, and the legacy of that struggle, and strive to complete the second and ongoing abolition, the moral conviction to end racism. This program was funded in part by Humanities New York with support from the National Endowment for the Humanities. Any views, findings, conclusions, or recommendations expressed in this program do not necessarily represent those of the National Endowment for the Humanities. It is now my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Melvin Todd. Melvin Todd is a graduate of Tuskegee University in Tuskegee, Alabama. He also completed advanced studies at the University of Vermont and the New Jersey Institute of Technology. For over 35 years, he worked both as an engineer and scientist for IBM Corporation, Monsanto Corporation, and Johnson & Johnson. Melvin is currently retired and actively engages in advocacy work for the mentally ill, those suffering from Alzheimer's disease, civil rights, and human rights. He also shares his story of growing up in Birmingham on the Kids in Birmingham 1963 website. Melvin now lives in Matawan, New Jersey. I'd also like to thank the organization Kids in Birmingham 1963 and Ann Jimerson, who herself started the website and lived in Birmingham during the Children's Crusade, for putting us in contact with Melvin Todd. Kids in Birmingham 1963 was created during the 50th anniversary of the Year of Birmingham. They offer a place for people to tell their personal stories of coming of age in that turbulent time, stories that may otherwise be left out of the history. They also actively collect the stories of individuals who lived in Birmingham, Alabama in 1963, and anyone who'd like to share their story can do so on their website at the link on your screen, and also the link will be in the video description. Additionally, if you'd like to learn the context of the history of the Children's Crusade, we made a video detailing the events of this historic moment in a previous video, published on February 19th, called Introduction to the Children's Crusade 1963. Feel free to check it out before or after watching Melvin's interview to give it a bit of context. This video is available on our YouTube channel. Without further ado, I hope you enjoyed the interview.
Okay, well, I was born and raised in a section of Birmingham, the western section of Birmingham, in a little community called Ensley. To be more precise, in the community of Ensley, I was born like a block away from this junction where the trolleys crossed over. It was called Tuxedo Junction. Tuxedo Junction was a little mecca, entertainment mecca for Blacks in the area. It became so famous that a band leader during the 1940s, a guy by the name of Erskine Hawkins, he wrote a song called Tuxedo Junction. It became very big during the 1940s and early 50s. In Tuxedo Junction, in the Ensley community, there was like a church almost on every corner. As I can say, even the bad people went to church. It was a very religious community. People based a lot of their living on what they had learned in Sunday school and from sermons in church. The community leaders during this time were the Black school principals, Black school teachers, the Black ministers or preachers, and also the Black undertakers. These were people that were looked up into in the community because they were professional type people. If the principal spoke with a parent and told the parent something was good or bad, a parent would normally follow what the principal said. Undertakers were important because during that particular period of time, white undertakers would not handle Black bodies. So it made a thriving business for Black undertakers. That was part of the racism of that time. Blacks could not be handled by a white undertaker. They couldn't even be buried in a cemetery where white people were buried. The community was really kind of protective of the children within the community. People who were not even related to you, you listened to them because in my case, my parents gave neighbors the authority to spank me if they saw me doing something wrong in the community. So that's the kind of community that I grew up in. It's very protective. They wanted the best for their children, and they wanted their children to grow up to be upright citizens and to make contributions to the society that they lived in. Starting off as a kid, my whole world was a segregated world. Every facet of life was segregated. As a very small child, one of the things that I noticed is that in our community, which we call, the adults call the colored folks settlement, the streets in the colored folks settlement were unpaved most of the time. They would basically put what they call slag, which was a byproduct of the steel making industry, on the streets to keep down dust. Right adjacent to our community was the white folks settlement. They had curbstones, sidewalks, and paved streets. Even when we went shopping, that was also a thing that I noticed early in life, is that when we went to downtown Ansley, the community that I grew up in, Ansley had a shopping district. There were lunch counters in the there was a lunch counter in the 5 and dime store, which was called H.L. Green during that time. The lunch counter was on the first floor, and only whites could go to that lunch counter. They eventually put a lunch counter in the basement, which was really a small lunch counter. But it always looked as though when I went in with my mother and my sister to do shopping at H.L. Green, that the aroma from the lunch counter would smell so delicious. And it looked like the white people were really enjoying themselves so much, sitting there eating or drinking coffee. And I wanted my parents to buy something from the lunch counter, and I wanted to sit on one of the swivel stools that they had. And my mother wouldn't let me do it, and she wouldn't let me go to what they call the colored folks counter downstairs, because she said, no, it's not sanitary down there. We'll eat when we get home. and that always had an impact on me, and I'm sure it had an impact on most other children of my age too. Um, and I know it did because we talked among each other about how unfair things were. In the same little business district, there was an ice cream parlor, Puro's Ice Cream. Uh, they had a few tables that the white teenagers went to, and they would take their dates there, and we could look in through the windows from the outside, and it looked like they were, the milkshakes looked absolutely delicious, but we could only buy an ice cream cone to go from a side window that was in the back. And I never understood it at that time why we had to go to that back window. We had a movie theater in the community. The Blacks had to sit in the balcony, and the seats were all cut up in the balcony. And the whites could sit down on the main floor. And the whites had a bathroom for women and a bathroom for men. And the crow's nest where we sat, there was only one bathroom. The men and the ladies had to queue up in the same line to use the one commode that was there. We knew that something was not right. We didn't know how to make things different. As a result, us young people, we were very receptive for anyone coming in telling us that we have a way of making things equal for everybody. So that's, and I think that's the story of most of the kids, the Black kids in Birmingham during that time. They, because of the indignities that we faced, we were receptive to anyone that offered a hope of making things different. We were fortunate in that some of the ministers who were progressive would preach sermons, and they used various biblical stories about Moses and the Israelites, slavery and that sort of thing, to motivate us to basically hitch our wagon to a star, to basically shoot for great things in life, to get the best education that we could, because they preached that one day things were going to be better for us, that we should prepare because that day would come. So they coaxed us to really work hard in school, learn as much as we could. In the same vein, there were certain ministers within our community who I think were very comfortable in their positions. And they would tell us kids that we were making things harder for ourselves, that we wwere disrupting things, that we were, if we just went slow, if we waited, things would get better. But these were ministers who didn't support the civil rights movement. But thank God we had a number of ministers who did. I actually, at my church, which was a church called Metropolitan CME Church, CME being Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, a guy by the name of Love Henry Welchel. He was a 20-something-year-old minister, and he became a mentor for me, and he took me around to various civil rights mass meetings with him. And I got on board the civil rights movement under his pastorship. He became so effective in the community that the Ku Klux Klan basically said that they were going to harm him and his family, and he was so effective in the community until community peoples said that they would protect him 24 hours a day, him and his family, at the parsonage at our church. When the bishop of the church, of the denomination of that Episcopal district found out, he was concerned about Reverend Welch's welfare, and he transferred him to a church out in California. But Reverend Welch was a motivator and a mentor for myself and a number of other people. Well, bombings during this period of time were not an uncommon occurrence. Since I lived very close to the steel mills, they had blast furnaces there, and certain times of the year, they would clean the blast furnaces out. They did preventative maintenance, and they basically, I don't know if they, what they did, but there would be explosions within the blast furnace, as I understand it, would clean the slag off the interior walls of the blast furnace. And we didn't know if this was the Ku Klux Klan setting off dynamite, or if it was a blast furnace. I recall one day I was going to my high school. I was probably in the 9th or 10th grade during that time, and we discovered that the home of A.D. King, Reverend A.D. King, which is the brother of Martin Luther King, his parsonage was 2 blocks from my high school. His house had been bombed. Nobody was hurt when that happened. My high school, in the back of the high school, there was an incinerator where they burned rubbish, where most of the hip kids hung around during recess. We found out during the same period of time that someone had put dynamite in the incinerator to blow it up. And luckily, the trigger didn't work, and the bomb was discovered. So nobody at my high school got hurt. My grandfather, who lived in another community, which was a more middle-class community. A community I lived in was more working class, and the community that my grandfather lived in, it was a community called Smithfield. During that time, there was a section of Smithfield where a number of professional Blacks lived, professional as far as being teachers, preachers, lawyers, and that sort of thing. And they would bomb in Smithfield frequently. As a matter of fact, that community, a section of that community, they nicknamed it Birmingham because it was bombed so frequently. And my granddad's house was just a block over from one of the bombings. And during that time, I really didn't think about all of the ramifications of it could have been easily been my grandfather, who had been bombed. And for some reason, it's probably because of youth, I felt somewhat invincible, that no matter what happened, I would survive to tell the story. And I think that that's the way a lot of young people feel. And also during that time too, I had gone through puberty. My voice had changed, and I started growing hair on my face, and had to prove to myself that I had courage, that I was a man, that I did manly things like to conquer my fear. And there was fear during that time, but myself and my friends, the way we dealt with the fear was to make a joke out of it. When we were deciding that we were going to go and participate in the demonstrations in Cali Ingram Park there, we had made plans on the things that we were going to do. One of my friends who traveled with me, who walked with me there, he had a face cloth and a bar of ivory soap. And he said, when they spray me, I'm going to take a bath, take my shirt off. And, one of my other buddies said, if a dog comes after me, I got a switchblade, I'm going to cut his neck, just to build up our own courage. And we had a plan for dealing with getting arrested too, that we would not carry any identification on us. And if we were jailed, we were going to give a fictitious name. All of us would give the same fictitious name. We would call ourselves Jimmy Hicks. We thought it was just a name we pulled out of the air. But that's, teenagers, early teenagers, basically trying to deal with the fears that they had, because we had seen some of our classmates on the evening news a day or two prior, and they were in a large holding area, and we said they looked to me at that time that they were having a good time being in jail, and we were kind of looking forward to joining them. But we knew that dogs might be out there, and we didn't know how we would deal with the threat of a dog, a police dog, biting us. Yeah. This happened during the month of May, and the month of May in Alabama can be very, very hot. I recall that we had to walk because for some reason the city transit buses were not running, and we don't know how our other classmates were getting to the park. So we set out just walking, and the temperature was in the 90-degree area. So we were wringing with sweat, and we had to take breathers in the shade every so often to walk to the park. We basically were kind of boosting each other up as we were, and encouraging each other as we walked. Uh, and when we finally got to the park, uh, things were kind of just breaking up. For some reason, people who had left the high school with us, we don't know how they got there before us, but a number of them had been ushered into paddy wagons, school buses. And when we got there, it was just the remnants that were still left. So my buddy who carried the face cloth and the ivory soap, we call them Bones. Bones was very disappointed that he couldn't get wet because we looked at getting arrested as street creds, credentials that showed that we were just like as active as our schoolmates who we saw on television in jail. So we really kind of look forward to that. One of the things I've never heard mentioned of what gave us courage and what kept us motivated to move in spite of our fear is the music. If you, some of the video of people who were demonstrating didn't capture that a number of the kids were singing. They were singing popular music tunes. One of the tunes was by a singer called Wilson Pickett. It was Land of a Thousand Dances. It was na 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 na, and it was the original words were like, "Do you know how to pony? Bony baloney, Moni baloney," and that sort of thing. And the kids had changed the words to say, "You know, I want my freedom. You know, I want it now." Now, 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 now. And there was music like that. And some of the religious songs that we sang that boosted our spirits. One that I recall in particular was this, the song, I know we sang it in churches, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm Gonna Let It Shine. I'm gonna let it shine all through my neighborhood. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine." So the music boosted our spirits. And the kids who were actually in the jail, they boosted their spirits with music. And even after I left Birmingham, went off to college and everything. And as a college student, being very active, was in situations where we faced a threat of violence and sometimes threats to our lives. We sang to boost our spirits again. And it would be interesting to see someone do a documentary on the songs that carried the movement along. It was a psychological battle too, because the police were trying to make you feel weak and defenseless. And you sang back with all of the fervor that you could gather to let them know that you felt strong, you felt good, that you were happy. So it was a battle of a psychological battle between the authorities and the students. Well, I've, speaking for myself first, and I think it probably relates to with my friends. We were overjoyed with the passage of the '64 Civil Rights Act. We were somewhat apprehensive on whether we could actually go and take advantage of the things that were said to be open to us. For myself too, I was somewhat reluctant. I had a mental block about Lyndon Baines Johnson during that time. And it was probably an immature response, but I didn't know how really earnest he was in what he was doing during that time, only because he spoke with a white Southern accent. His words were good, but it was the accent, the Southern accent. It sounded too much like Alabama's governor during that time, George Wallace, and the guy who was before George Wallace, I think his name, John Patterson, and that sort of thing. I think all of us were very happy that we had some part in making this happen. We didn't really, during the time we were going through the demonstrations, we didn't know that it was going to culminate into the Civil Rights Act. We only knew that we had to do something because the conditions that we lived under were so horrendous. Okay, I think students, when they do speak out, and they speak out in passionate terms, that they can cause changes to happen. They can, when they speak with conviction, they can cause adults to reevaluate their positions on things. For us as kids in Birmingham during that time, doing some of the things that we were doing, we were going against the demands on some of the adults that we respected. We went against the wishes of our school principal and against the wishes of some of the teachers who thought that we were making matters worse. I think even today, with the controversy that we have going on now, with the whole thing about this critical race theory and that sort of thing, the most powerful thing that, in my view, that could happen is if we had young people standing up saying, I'm not afraid, I don't feel guilty, I want to learn about what has happened in this country so that I can help make the country a better country, that I don't make the same mistakes when I become an adult, that I can make a difference. If this was student-driven, I think it would really make a big difference with politicians. I think that it would cause a lot of parents who are only thinking on a surface level to reevaluate why they think and feel the way they do about different issues of the day. For some reason, when an adult sees critical thinking going on in young people, it causes them to think. And in many cases, it causes them to change their views. There's one thing, and it was basically because I told you I came up in a very religious setting, and it was something that I used to hear mentioned by the minister in my church. He used to preach from the book of Isaiah. It was Isaiah, the 11th chapter, the 6th verse. And, just quickly, it reads, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fattened calf together, and a little child shall lead them. And the whole thing about a little child leading a movement for a better life, a more peaceful life, is something that really appealed to me. And it's one of the few things from my growing up experience that I always remember. I don't know if it was, if I took it out of context or what, but a little child leading, I think a little child can have an impact. Young people can have more impact than they even realize.
Thank you, Melvin, for sharing your story with us. I know that many of our viewers, like myself, will benefit enormously from hearing your story and learning about the incredible valor yourself and thousands of children displayed. Your words will always remind us that ordinary people can have a massive impact in doing good for our country and for the world. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, please remember that we have made a previous video where we talk about the history of the Children's Crusade by giving some context behind it, such as Martin Luther King Jr.'s march in Birmingham in April of that same year. Please help us by completing a brief survey available at the link on your screen and also in the video description box. Your feedback will help NAHOF receive funding and help plan future projects. Additionally, please contact NAHOF with any questions and if you're interested in learning more about the organization and its work. Once again, thank you, Melvin, for donating your time and contributing to this program. And thank you, the audience, for joining us on this educational journey, Black History Matters. We hope to see you at our next presentation.